In a tiny village in France, a postman once tripped over a stone, looked down, and somehow saw the beginning of a palace. His name was Joseph Ferdinand Cheval, a rural mail carrier in Hauterives in the Drôme, and he was not an architect, sculptor, engineer, or billionaire with decorative boredom. Every workday, Cheval walked more than 30 kilometers through country roads, carrying letters, postcards, magazines, and other people's news across fields and villages. Those postcards mattered because in the late 19th century, they were tiny windows to faraway temples, castles, animals, monuments, and worlds he would probably never visit. Cheval had been born in 1836, the son of a rural family, and by the time this story truly begins, life had taught him more endurance than glamour.
Then in April 1879, when he was 43, his foot caught on a strangely shaped stone during his rounds, almost knocking him flat into history. Most people trip on a rock, mutter something unprintable, and keep walking. Cheval apparently received a career memo from geology. He picked up the stone, admired its odd shape, and later returned to the same place where more strange stones seemed to be waiting for him. At first, he carried stones in his pockets and basket, which is already a bold misunderstanding of how pockets are supposed to behave. Later, the pockets were not enough, so the postman added a wheelbarrow, because when a dream gets heavy, logistics enters the chat. By day, he delivered the mail. By evening and at night, he hauled stones, mixed mortar, and began arranging his private, impossible thing in his vegetable garden. There was no patron, no blueprint, no architecture school behind him. Only a self-taught builder with a postal route, a stubborn imagination, and a growing pile of stones.
The village saw a man building something nobody had ordered, nobody understood, and nobody could politely classify, which is always inconvenient for people who enjoy categories. Cheval kept working anyway, letting the images he delivered each day combine with nature, memory, faith, fantasy, and whatever the stones themselves suggested. The first facade rose slowly, full of caves, pillars, towers, shells, tiny stairways, and forms that looked half carved by hand and half dreamed by weather. Then came animals, elephants, birds, caimans, serpents, and patient stone creatures that made the garden feel less like a yard and more like a myth trying to stand up. The palace borrowed from everywhere at once: Hindu temples, medieval castles, Swiss chalets, North African houses, biblical scenes, and postcard geography with absolutely no passport control. It did not choose a single style. It invited every style to dinner, gave them all mortar, and asked them to behave. Some people laughed because a postman pushing stones after work looked unreasonable. And public opinion has always been very confident before the results arrive. Cheval did not answer by becoming louder. He answered by placing another stone, then another, until mockery had to keep walking around the evidence. The numbers became almost unreal. 10,000 days, 93,000 hours, and 33 years of work, according to the famous inscription on the palace. From 1879 to 1912, while France changed around him, Cheval kept building the same dream, one wheelbarrow load at a time. When he finished, he was in his late 70s, and his vegetable garden held a monument that looked like childhood, religion, travel, stubbornness, and stone had all collided. On the walls, Cheval left sentences about labor, dreams, and perseverance, including the plainest possible signature for the whole miracle: the work of one man.
The palace was not useful in the ordinary sense, which is exactly why ordinary sense is sometimes the least interesting person in the room. It was a shelter for imagination, A handmade argument that someone without credentials could still leave behind something impossible to ignore. After the palace, Cheval spent 8 more years building his own tomb in the cemetery at Hauterives, because apparently retirement had failed to brief him properly. He called it the Tomb of Silence and Endless Rest, a name so final that even bureaucracy would have trouble asking for revisions. Ferdinand Cheval died in 1924, and the man who had carried other people's messages for decades left one last message made from stone. For a while, the art world did what the art world often does with outsiders: stared, frowned, adjusted its vocabulary, and arrived late wearing confidence. But in 1969, French Culture Minister André Malraux helped classify the Palais Ideal as a historic monument, recognizing it as a rare work of naive architecture. That classification matters because it meant the strange garden palace was no longer just a local curiosity. It was part of France's cultural memory. Today, visitors walk through Hauterives and find a palace that was not built for kings, armies, taxes, or anyone's extremely serious official portrait. It was built because one man noticed a stone, kept noticing stones, and refused to let the daily route be only daily. A postman's work usually disappears into mailboxes, kitchens, offices, and unopened drawers. Cheval's route somehow ended in towers, animals, and a dream you can touch. The first stone almost made him fall, but for 33 years after that, Ferdinand Cheval kept picking up the world until it became a palace, which is oddly human, losing an argument with gravity, then answering with architecture.